Derik Queen needs to be great for Maryland basketball to turn it around.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys head over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are much better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Derik Queen is the key to Maryland basketball turning this thing around. Obviously, everybody is important. Obviously, everybody plays their role on the basketball team, and that's what basketball is about. It's about playing your role. It's about guys doing their jobs. It's about everybody coming together to form a team, and that's just what team sports is about in general. But I honestly think when we look back at this year and how we've performed in certain areas, I think Derik Queen is clearly the key for Maryland basketball turning this thing around. And we're not like in the same spot that we were in last year where we kind of felt hopeless. It felt like there wasn't much we could do. The pieces just didn't fit. We didn't have enough shooting. We didn't have enough scoring ability. We did some things well, like we defended well, we played well at home, but we just didn't have enough talent on the team, enough shot making ability. This year, I think we have enough talent to be really good still. And there's still plenty of games left. I know we just dropped to 1-3 in the Big Ten, but we're still arguably in the tournament. We're still receiving like 7 votes. Like, this Maryland team's not out of anything. They have to figure things out. They have to get better. And we got to be able to turn this thing around. And I honestly think it starts with Derik Queen. And I think he is really the key to being able to turn it around. And when I say turn it around, I mean we've lost 2 straight Big Ten games on the road. To be fair, if you're going to lose in the Big Ten, you want to lose on the road. That's something that's really big, and something that Kevin Willard probably could have done better is winning it. Actually, not probably, can definitely do better, is figure out how to close games on the road. I think we have a really tough time these Maryland teams winning on the road. It's hard in college basketball to win on the road. It's not just Maryland. It's plenty of teams that have trouble winning on the road, but we lost 2 straight to Washington and to Oregon. Washington, a team that's probably going to finish at the bottom of the Big Ten, a solid team, which would have been a nice little win, a team we should have beaten 100%, but we ended up losing to. And then Oregon, who was previously ranked 9 in the country. We'll see what happens when the new rankings come out next week. But an Oregon team that was definitely a really good team as well, a lot better than the Washington team, a game that we weren't supposed to win, but I thought we had every opportunity to win. And watching these games, I thought we were balanced enough. I thought we were good enough where we can kind of just say, okay, roll your guys out there. Roll 5 guys out there. It's okay if somebody has an off night, because somebody's going to be able to pick up the slack, because I thought we were that talented. But more and more, I come to realize that we're not that good. We're a good team. We're a team that can be in March Madness. We're a team that can compete in any game in the Big Ten. I don't care. Name a team, whether it's Michigan State, Illinois. We've already played Purdue. We've already played Oregon. Like, this isn't a team we haven't got blown out or anything yet. What the most we've lost by is like 5 to I think Marquette or Purdue was like about the same score, about 5 points, 4 points. Same thing with Oregon. We lost by 4. We're not getting blown out, but I don't think this team's talented enough where we can kind of just say, okay, if Derik Queen doesn't play well, Julian Reese will pick up the slack. If if those bigs don't play well and are in foul trouble, then we can trust Jordan Geronimo off the bench to play well, and Jacoby Gillespie and Rodney Rice will pick up the slack. We're going to need some consistency from some players. It's not just a team that I'm going to be like, a couple of these guys we know are going to have a really good game, and maybe a couple of guys are quieter. I think we're going, and the main guy I point to in that is Derik Queen. I think he has to be at his highest level for us to win games. I just think that's what it is. And when you've seen this year, when he's played at his highest level, when he's played really good basketball against some good teams, it's still a lot of the reasons we're able to stay in some of these games. When you look at his stats and when you look at what he's done, I still think he's our best player. He leads our team in points. He's arguably our best rebounder with Julian Reese. And I think he's slowed down over the last couple games against Washington, against UCLA. And I think that's really starting to hurt us. I think you saw against Washington him have his worst game of his freshman campaign. Just didn't look as good, didn't look as smooth as he usually does, only dropping 4 points while only playing 18 minutes of play, shooting 14% from the field. Like, Derik Queen's a guy that I feel like would usually shoot a pretty high percentage from the field. On the year, he's 56% from the field. He couldn't make a free throw. He shot 40% from the free throw line. On the year, he's 75% from the free throw line. He just couldn't do anything against a Washington team where we still were up at halftime. We were still up for a lot of the game, but we clearly needed Derik Queen for us to take the next step and for us to be able to win that game down the stretch. And we couldn't rely on him. We couldn't rely on his scoring because he just couldn't do it that game. We couldn't rely on him in most of the game because he was in foul trouble. And we just couldn't trust him in that game because he just wasn't playing good enough ball. And all freshmen are going to have bad games. I don't care who it is, but you're going to have a moment where the moment's probably too big, or you try and do too much, or you don't try and do enough. And it's tough as a freshman, especially when you're as talented as Derik Queen. Sometimes it's hard because you don't know exactly how much should I take over, how much shots can take here. It's tough sometimes, but I do think that he's the key. When he doesn't play well against Washington, we don't win. And that's with Julian Reese having a really good game. And some other guys didn't play their best, but we don't win. And I thought against Oregon, I thought the stats are a bit misleading. I thought he played solid basketball for a lot of the game. He got off to that fast start, I thought. But then I thought things kind of slowed down for Derik Queen throughout the game against Oregon. And I think what really hurt us, and what I said on another podcast, is that the reason I feel like we're having trouble closing out games is because we don't know how to go to. It's a balanced five with five guys that can all score the rock, that have played different roles in college basketball. Like Jacoby Gillespie obviously was the man at Belmont. Like, if they needed a shot late in the game, he's going to take the shot. And I think that's why he took it against Oregon, some of those late shots. Julian Reese in the past was a go-to guy for us. And then you look at Rodney Rice hasn't played a ton of college basketball, didn't play last year, but he's a guy that could shoot down the stretch. And I think we have trouble kind of defining who should get the shots. And I think you got to run action for Derik Queen because clearly he's our best scoring option I think we've seen this year, especially if you need a two. I think Derik Queen's the best guy to go to, even before you get into, we need a two, we need a three here, when it's just like 3 minutes left in the game and it's a tied game. Who do you go to? I think you have to run a set for Derik Queen because I think we're having trouble figuring out who needs to take that shot, who needs to do those different things. And I think Derik Queen is the key to a lot of that. We got to give him the ball. We got to let him create. And I know at times he does, but I think at times we get away from it too much and we forget that he's probably our best option when it comes down to scoring the ball at a consistent level. Like I said against Oregon, I thought he was solid and I thought he had moments where he looked really good, but I also thought he had moments where he didn't play well. 17 points, which is obviously pretty good, 5 rebounds, played almost the entire game at 34 minutes, wasn't out very much. But 2 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals, 2 turnovers as well. Definitely something we want him to get better at. He's at times turning over the ball at way too high of a margin. But I just think he's the key to this. When he was playing his best basketball, it felt like we could beat anybody. But when he plays a stinker like he did against Washington, all of a sudden we can't win the game against a team that's nowhere near as talented as us. But when he plays his best basketball, like when he played against Marquette and had 24, when he played against Purdue again and had 26, like that's when we are at our best. When Villanova, we don't win that game by 1 point without Derik Queen dropping 22. And so at the end of the day, there's high-level players all around him. I think Rodney played really well last game, and he's a really good player. I think Julian Reese obviously is really good. Celta Miguel has his moments. Gillespie has his moments as well. But I think at the end of the day, Derik Queen is the backdraw. Derik Queen is the guy that we should be able to rely on to finish games. And I think he's got to be the closer. It's sometimes tough when you're not a guard to be the closer, but he's the guy that I want the ball in the hands of late in the game, and I think he's good enough for that. Maryland should consider playing Malik Washington not right away. I'll talk about what I mean next. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spendings, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app premium features. For me, one of the best features is a subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So a lot of people seem to think, and me included, that Malik Washington has a pretty good chance at starting right away for Maryland football. And I have my concerns about it, and I don't hate Malik Washington being QB2 for Maryland football for the first couple games, first 5 or 6 games of the season. I think that when we talk about Maryland's schedule, it is really good for a freshman quarterback. They start off with 3 games against easy opponents, but I'm still not convinced that Malik Washington, once we get to Big Ten play, should be the starter or should be the starter right away for Maryland football. I think there's a couple different ways to go about this, and I think this is entirely possible. I can see Mike Loxley doing it. Justin Martin, transfer from UCLA, redshirt sophomore, was a really high-level recruit out of high school, 4-star recruit and everything, is still talented, hasn't quite figured it out. Malik's still the future of this program, but I do think there's a chance that Justin Martin plays right away, and I not only do I think that he has a chance of doing it, I think it might be a good idea. I think the first 3 games, I don't mind if Loxley does a thing where he says Martin's the starter, but he plays Malik Washington and Martin like almost the same amount. Like they both get half the snaps, let's say. And then to start the Big Ten play, the first couple games, we might give it to Martin. And then after things start to go downhill or he doesn't look as good or whenever Malik Washington's ready, we can play Malik. I think people sometimes, at least me, I think it's scary to just throw a freshman into the Big Ten, into the dogs of the Big Ten and say, go win games, go do your thing. The Big Ten's a tough league. Arguably, right now, I've always been a guy that says the SEC is the best conference. But this year, you could argue it's the Big Ten. With Ohio State being really good, they look like the best team in the country. With Oregon technically being the number one before Ohio State knocked them out of the playoffs, Penn State looks solid. Like it's a good year for the Big Ten, and it looks like the Big Ten's the best conference this year. And I just believe that when you look like a guy from Malik Washington, we don't need to rush it. We're hopefully gonna have 4 years, maybe 3 years if it goes really well of this kid. You don't need to play him a couple games earlier than he needs to if the kid's not ready. If the kid's ready, I'm all for him starting, but I just think it might make sense because if Justin Martin, no offense to the kid, no offense to Justin Martin, but if Justin Martin doesn't look good in the first couple games, it's not the end of the world. He's not the future quarterback of Maryland football. He's just not. But if Malik Washington doesn't look good the first couple of games and is getting hit a lot, and maybe losing confidence and some of those things that come with playing quarterback that are entirely possible, then that's not something that you want. That's not something at all that you want. And I think a guy like Malik Washington, you don't want him losing confidence. You don't want him starting off bad, or you don't want him to get injured. And let's be honest, Maryland's offensive line has been horrible. Do you really want to stick him besides that O line before he knows exactly what he's going to do with the ball? Before he's really elite in his reads? Maybe the Maryland offensive line can be better next year. I've been having that take. I think it's going to be better because I think we bring some of the starters back, as well as some of the younger guys get another year that Loxley recruited that we feel really good about. We get the kid that was a transfer from Buffalo right back after being gone from injury the entire year that we expected to be able to start. We get the 4-star Jalen Gilchrist. We get a transfer coming in as well. In Javen James from Akron, like we get some guys, but still, I still think that it could be bad. And so I just think you want to be patient with this kid. And I think Mike Loxley is a guy that will err towards being patient. I think a lot of people just think Malik's going to go out there and start, but I think he'll play eventually. But I don't know right away if he'll start. I think he'll play in the early games because those are the games to get good experience, and those are the games Maryland should win pretty easily. But just don't be surprised. And I almost think it's best case if he doesn't start right away. Give Justin Martin some time. Let Malik sit in the quarterback room for a little bit, so he can decipher what he sees. He can learn. So it's just similar to the NFL conversation that I feel like happens every single year. Should this guy sit? Should this guy play? There's so many situations. I know you guys see those in the NFL and follow all that stuff. I don't have to tell you guys about those. I think it's a similar thing in college. It's a little bit different because you don't have unlimited time with these guys. It's not like you're hoping this guy to be your 10-year quarterback. You're hoping this guy is your quarterback for the next 3-4 years. And I still think that's plenty of time. I just don't think you want to rush it with Malik, with a bad offensive line, a weaker receiving core than we've had in a while. To be completely frank, to be honest, unless they prove me wrong and guys really step up in a big way, I just think it's a weaker receiving core. The offensive line hasn't been good, which probably means the run game probably won't be great either. So I just think you want to be patient with the kid, and I don't think you have to play him right away. I think you can get him in there later on in the season. Maryland's guard play. We'll talk about the Maryland Terrapins guard play. Is there things that need to be fixed? Does Gillespie need to be better? We'll talk about that next. Maryland guard play. I think Maryland basketball's guard play is in a really interesting spot, and I think it has to improve. I think it has to be better in a couple different ways. One thing I got to point directly to Jacoby Gillespie. I think he, along with Derik Queen, are two guys that I feel like are the biggest keys. I said Derik Queen. I talked about in the first segment. I'm guessing you guys listen to that. Is the biggest key to us winning games and us winning games down the stretch. But next in line, I honestly think is Jacoby Gillespie, and he's definitely cooled off a little bit. Had a weird game against Oregon, but same thing that happened with Derek Queen against Washington happened to Jacoby Gillespie against Washington, where he barely played any minutes, didn't play well, didn't I don't think he scored 1 point, was not good at all. Where we've seen him play at a pretty high level the entire season, and we've seen Gillespie start to struggle in Big Ten play. And I just believe that we look at a guy like Gillespie, we need him. He's our best shot creator from the guard spot in terms of getting your shot off with the dribble and be able to create off the dribble and those different things. He's our best guy at that. He's best at doing that. And I think Gillespie, we need him to have good guard play, for him to do good things, and for us, our team in general. When he was playing at a high level, we had a chance to win games. Against Oregon, when he's inconsistent, we don't win. When Queen and Gillespie aren't at their best in the last two games, we don't win. Even though he had 16 points and shot 42% from the 3-point line, the numbers don't look bad. He took some bad shots down the stretch, and I don't even hate him taking shots down the stretch. I think they were way forced. I thought they were way early in the shot clock, and I felt like he had to do it. But I just think he has to be better if we're going to be good, because it's not matching up right now. And this is why I was talking about with the guard play. It's just not matching up. Gillespie either has a really good game and shoots the ball really well and looks like the next best point guard in the Big Ten, or we see a game where, again, like against some of these other opponents, where Gillespie looks bad, and then it's like, oh, Rodney Rice has to drop 19 or 20 points and look really good, or it's Rodney Rice can't seem to make a shot, and he looks really, he doesn't look great, but Celta Miguel all of a sudden picks up the slack and looks really good. And if we can't get these guys firing at one time, all at once, we're not going to be very good. We're not going to be able to take the next step. We're not going to be able to be a March team. And I know some guys are going to have poor shooting days, but if you're not having your best shooting day, you got to make it up somewhere else. Like Gillespie's a really good passer. He's proven that he can be our team leader and assist, that he can pass the ball at a really high level, that he can do those different things at a high level. And if he's not doing that while he's not scoring, then it's like, well, what are you bringing to the court? I give credit to Deshaun Harris-Smith because he's a guy that's taken out of this starting lineup, and he doesn't shoot the ball entirely well, and he knows that. He's not the best offensive guy, and sometimes he feels like an offensive liability, but he's a guy to figure out how to make his role and to play at different ways. He plays hard on the defensive end. He's starting to find his shot a little bit. He's doing some other things well. And so I just think that sometimes these guys are relying on their shooting too much. Like Celta Miguel puts up a lot of shots a game, and then it's like, if you're not scoring, Celton, what do I feel good about you doing? And I feel like they have to figure out how to do things, do other things well, and then if you're shooting well, then it'll be a plus. But I really think Kevin Willard has to figure some of that out, because I think Selton, Rice, and Gillespie are all good. None of them are as good as Jameer Young was, but they're all better than any other guard that we had last year besides Jameer Young. And I really believe that. I think they're better shot creators. I mean, Deshaun Harris-Smith was one of the main ones on the team, and there's a reason Deshaun is our sixth man, you would say now. And so I do think they're better than any guard we had besides Jameer Young last year, but they don't have quite the consistency that Jameer Young had. Jameer Young was getting 25 no matter what, or 20 no matter what, in a game, and I haven't seen that consistency from these guys. And I talked about Derik Queen being the key, but these guys are next up. Like Julian Reese, he's going to go up and down in terms of the scoring. Like this year, that's not really his role. His role is to block shots, play good defense, rebound, offensive rebound, and give us offense when we need it. But this year, Gillespie and Ronnie's roles, Miguel, is to make shots. And we're going to need them to be able to do that in order for us to win games and play at a high level. And that's kind of how I see it for Maryland basketball, and that's how I see the guard play having to be. And I think it has to be better in order for us to hit our stride again. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.